Tonight, Rebel News is in the heart of the G7 meeting in Alberta. It's June 16th, and this is the Ezra Levant Show.
Shame on you, you censorious thug.
Hi, everybody. What a great weekend we had in Red Deer, Alberta. If you were one of the 600 plus people who were there, nice to see you. And if you weren't, well, hopefully you'll have a chance to attend one of our events elsewhere in the country. It was a conference, day-long conference we had about Alberta independence. And Rebel News was sort of the big tent. We hosted a range of voices, different political parties, different activists. And to me, the highlight of the debate of the event was a debate between David Legg, who was making the case for Alberta within Canada, versus Keith Wilson, who was saying, no, we gotta go it alone. And I really love the fact that Rebel News was hosting this whole large conversation. You know our motto, telling the other side of the story. I think the regime media is extremely hostile to Alberta independence. They have some real reasons and mainly fake reasons. They just don't like the West and they don't like Western ideas, and they're a little bit scared that Alberta actually goes, and then who's going to pay for all their welfare states. So anyway, it was a really great get-together. I think the referendum in Alberta is going to be the news story of 2026. How could it not be? I mean, if Quebec had a separation referendum, that would dominate the news for a year, surely. But Alberta is going to have one. And actually, support for independence in Alberta is higher today than support for independence in Quebec. And I think Mark Carney is probably going to make that even worse. Here's a quick clip of some of the goings on that we had in Red Deer on Saturday.
She's so small, though, you can lose her in a big crowd. Now, one of the names I just mentioned deserves, of course, more airtime, a lot more airtime.
Well, as soon as we were done in Red Deer, part of our team, Sydney Fazard, Angelica Toy, and Sheila Gunn-Reid, were making their way down to Kananaskis country. That's just west of Calgary. That is where Canada is hosting this year's G7 summit. G7, as you know, used to be called the G8 when Russia was in it, but Trudeau and others kicked him out. These are sort of the seven. They're not the largest economies in the world. If they were, then India would be in there and Canada probably wouldn't be. But I call them sort of like the super friends. It's Canada, the United States, UK. It's not the whole allies like Australia, New Zealand are not in there, Japan, Italy, Germany. So it's sort of like the super friends, and there's seven of them. So every year they rotate to another one of those countries. So the last time the G7 was in Canada was in 2018. So it's our turn again. So they're back. So it's sort of a prestige event, and the countries sort of show off to the world. And of course, the government hates Rebel News, the Canadian government. Those other governments don't mind us. I mean, we've been accredited in the United States. We've been accredited in the United Kingdom, in France. It's only Canada that hates free speech. So they tried to keep us out. As you know, we had to rush to court in an emergency basis. Right before trial, the government lawyer said, no, you guys can come in. It was all a misunderstanding. Our email wasn't working. They literally said that. But I think that they deceived the court when they said we could come in. I think they're trying some shenanigans about keeping us out of the actual scrums. So we're in like some big media holding area, but I think they tricked the court. I'm going to learn a little bit more about what they did. If they did, I think we're going to go back to court and show the court that the government lied to them. I don't have all my facts yet, so we'll figure it out. But of course, the content is more important than our battle to be there, although our battle to be there is important too. I want to show you a couple clips from today's proceedings. I think Mark Carney is quite something. Let me show you the slobbering welcome he gave to Donald Trump. And you know me, I'm Trump all the way. I mean, we were for Trump in 2016, 2020, 2024. We literally trademarked Make Canada Great Again. I mean, there is no one Trumpier in Canada than us. But even to me, I mean, cool it, Mark Carney. Get a room, you two. Take a look at this.
Nostalgia isn't a strategy. We have to change with the times and to build a better world. And some of you, such as you, Mr. President, have anticipated these massive changes and are taking bold measures to address them. All of us around this table are reinforcing our militaries and security services for the new world. But we all know that there can be no security without economic prosperity and no prosperity without resilience. And in a world where shocks flow across the borders, that resilience comes from cooperation that starts around this table, cooperation that can lead to a new era of prosperity, energy security and critical minerals, artificial intelligence, quantum, combating human smuggling and transnational repression.
Holy cow. I mean, if a conservative had slobberingly embraced Trump that hard, it would be a scandal. But I guess liberal voters just don't care. I'm trying to understand, would the real Mark Carney please stand up? I mean, he campaigned as hating Trump, divorcing Canada from Trump, reoriented Canada away from Trump, saying the relationship with America is over. I don't know who Mark Carney really is. And maybe there is no real Mark Carney. It's whoever he's told to be in that moment. Here's a little bit more from the press conferences so far at the G7.
What is holding up a deal with Canada from your perspective?
It's not so much holding up. I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something, hopefully.
Anyways, I'm glad our reporters are there, and I'm delighted that our reporters care so much about freedom of the press that they're willing to go to court. And we'll do it again if we need to. I want to talk a little bit more about a couple other subjects, though, including this clip of Kash Patel, who's the FBI director on Donald Trump, who had some startling news on a podcast the other day that I actually didn't see until today. I sort of missed it. Did you know that the United States has the lowest murder rate right now that they've had in decades, or at least possibly in memory? I don't want to say ever, because it was probably lower before statistics were kept. But here, take a look at his comments just a few days ago.
We are on track to have the lowest homicide rate ever. Murder rate ever.
In the country?
Yeah.
Really?
We're already, and look, we got 6 more months to go, so we're not done yet for the year, but we're already down 20% from last year, and we broke it this week that right now, the murder rate, if we, the FBI and our government partners, achieve the mission, will give the American people the lowest murder rate in decades.
That's incredible.
And that's what I'm focused on.
What steps have been made to do that? Like, how did that become real?
So I think, and I've worked with cops and law enforcement a lot in the past, and you have too. They're awesome. All they wanted to do was do the work. Once President Trump got elected, before I even got the nomination, right? And when I was traveling the country with him before that, they were like, "We take the handcuffs off of us. Let us go do our jobs." And that's where I came up with "Let good cops be cops." I said, if I'm going to get this job, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you, the agents, the police officers, the sheriffs, go out there and do the work you so badly want to do. And I'm going to give you the resources you need to do it. And I'm going to take away the politicization and weaponization, saying, oh, we can't target this group or this thing or this area. And that's it. That's what we've done.
So how is it that Kash Patel and Donald Trump have reduced the murder rate just so immediately? They haven't even been in power. Is it even 6 months? And how do you get the murder rate the lowest in history? Well, part of the reason is getting the FBI out into the field. Stop, persecuting Christians or going against the January 6ers. How about go after some real crime? Move them out of Washington. Back police in general, back the blues, stop the funding cuts, stop the political correctness. But I think it's indubitable that the number one reason murders has fallen in America is because thousands of illegals, including violent illegals, including gang members, have been deported. You've seen those images of the most radical MS-13 in Tren de Aragua, I'm not sure if I'm saying those gang names right, being deported to a specially built gang supermax prison in El Salvador, which is an incredible thing in itself. If you take hundreds or even thousands of illegals, and if you're starting with the baddest hombres there are, you're starting with the murderers and the rapists, of course you're going to have a reduction in crime, not just from the ones who are no longer in a position to murder or rape, but from others who are now spending a little bit more time hiding and running than committing crimes. By the way, Rebel News was in New York City this weekend while Sheila and Sid and Angelica and I were in Red Deer. Efrain Monsanto and Alexa Lavoie were in New York watching the anti-police riots. Some of them were riots. It wasn't quite the riot we thought we would get. It wasn't quite the LA levels, but we were there. We wanted to see how Antifa and others would react to mass deportations. You take a look. Here's some of Alexa's reports. You can find them all at riotreports.com.
Is that there's too many freeloaders here, man. Too many of them. And we need all the stuff that they were giving out to the other countries like Palestine and Israel, all that stuff. We need them here too, because home first before everybody else.
Can I ask you quickly, what do your flags mean?
Huh?
What do your flags mean?
It means resistance.
Resistance, but you're proud to be American.
Yeah.
So how
Real
come,
American. I'm not a European American.
so how come you are dragging and...
Because this flag don't represent us. This flag represent you.
I think that Donald Trump is dead set on mass deportations. He's got to be. Biden had let in literally millions of people. So even if Trump deported 1,000 people a day, there's no way that's going to come even close. 1,000 a day would be 365,000 a year. Over a 4-year term, that's barely 1 million people. That's not even 10% of the job. So speed and mass numbers is key. I think it's the most popular thing he's doing. I want to show you another tweet in the same vein. This is from the Twitter feed of NBC Latino. The president of a meatpacking plant says, quote, "There's no playbook on how to move forward after 76 workers at Glen Valley Foods in Omaha were arrested." Really? So it's a meatpacking plant, and they were hiring illegals, and Trump raided them, and 76 of his staff were sent home. And he doesn't know what to do. Now, I don't know anything about meatpacking, so I could be dead wrong here, but maybe hire Americans. Oh, and if that means you've got to pay a couple bucks more an hour, then do it. I mean, most meatpacking plants are owned by national or multinational companies. They can pay a few extra bucks. And if that means, frankly, a steak is an extra $1, but you have the lowest murder rate in history, it's probably a good compromise, don't you think? You know, if you ban and deport illegals, crime falling is pretty much common sense. And I want to go north of the border now. Every week, there's another shocking mass announcement by a police force in the greater Vancouver or Toronto areas. Here's one from the Peel region, which is outside Toronto. It's about a towing where there's these rival tow truck gangs, and there's extortion and staged collisions, and there's shootings. Take a look at that announcement. And there was an announcement, there's extortion announcement. There's, Take a look at this crazy shootout the other day. Did you see this shootout?
Newly released by Toronto police, people duck and take cover as 3 masked men burst in and opened fire at a busy pub on its opening night in March. One of the worst mass shootings the city has ever seen, injuring 12 people.
Some were shot multiple times. One person was shot 6 times and survived.
Police now say they've linked that attack to a rash of violence targeting the local tow truck industry, including this drive-by shooting 3 days earlier outside a tow yard. Watch as the victim hides behind that car. The suspects then turn around and start shooting again. The victim, struck by a bullet, falls to the ground but survives.
I don't know if you can tell, but I'll help you. They're all migrants. And when I mean all, every single one of the people charged is a migrant. They're overwhelmingly foreign. Imagine if we stopped mass immigration, like stopped digging, and then started deporting like they are in America. We would find crime plummeting too. Who do you think is doing the crimes of stealing vehicles from Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, putting them on a ship and sending them overseas? Those are foreigners coming from a low-trust society who come to our paradise, and instead of working hard to get ahead, they said, these are suckers. They have pretend cops with pretend laws, and it's like a pile of butter, and I'm a hot knife. That's what they're doing to our country. If you were to stop mass immigration and deport the criminals, we would have crime at an all-time low as well. I should tell you that in the United Kingdom, they finally announced they're going to have an inquiry into mass rape by Pakistani Muslim men. Again, do you see a theme here? Very interesting times. I got to tell you, tomorrow I'm going to have a feature interview with Dr. Daniel Pipes of the Middle East Forum, because I think things in Iran are going so interestingly. Now, there is a faction on the right, I'm going to call them the Qatar right, that says, no American war, no fighting with Muslim or Arabs, don't have a single American boy go to war for Israel. To which I say, I completely agree. So it's a good thing that there isn't any American participation in the war. I'm sure there's some information sharing, intelligence sharing. That's what allies do with each other. I mean, you have to remember that Iran's motto is death to America. And they don't just say it, they do it. One of the largest terrorist attacks against America, I think after 9/11, it might even be the largest, was the blowing up of the U.S. Marines in Lebanon. The Ayatollahs, Hezbollah, their proxies are really one of the most murderous enemies of America. And Israel is fighting them. They're using American weapons, but everyone has American weapons, including the Taliban these days. There aren't any U.S. soldiers on the ground. There isn't even a U.S. base in Israel. And speaking of the G7, you can't actually say that about the other G7 countries. There's about a half a dozen U.S. Air Force bases in the United Kingdom to this day. Did you know that? There's about 10,000 American troops stationed in the U.K. I've told you before that in Germany, there's about 50,000 troops on about 40 U.S. bases. Have you heard of Rammstein? That's the name of my favorite band. That's one of the many U.S. bases. There's so many U.S. bases still in Germany, in Japan, in Italy. You've probably heard of Aviano. Now, there's no U.S. bases in Canada, but I think there are in every other G7 country. There's none in France. I'll give them that. So, yeah, I agree with the Qatar right. By that, I mean conservatives who are paid to protect Qatar's interests. I don't think Americans need to go to war for Israel, and I don't think they ever have. So that's a good thing to feel good about it. But if you are part of the Qatar right and you really are principled, then I think you should work at getting America out of Japan, Italy, Germany, the UK, just for consistency's sake. Israel has completed the degradation of the Iranian military. Devastated. I would be surprised if it has 10% of its capacity that it had a year ago. The nuke program is largely done. There have been about 30 or 40 Israelis killed, which of course is terrible, about 600 injured, but compared to other Israeli wars, that's minuscule. And Iran is effectively neutered, as are its proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas, and the Houthis seem to be keeping their heads down. I think the real risk from Iran is now overseas, as in not in Iran and Israel, but in Canada and the United States and the UK and France and Argentina and places like that. There's a real risk of lone wolf style attacks, and actually much worse than lone wolf attacks. I mentioned Argentina because that's one of the places where Hezbollah blew up a Jewish center, killing scores of people. I think that Canada is at risk. Canada has a large and active Iranian agent problem. We know from Global TV, Global News' report, there's about 600 or 700 Iranian agents running around in Canada. That's the risk. By the way, Donald Trump was asked about the war today. Here's what he said.
Messages from intermediaries that Iran wishes to de-escalate the conflict.
Yeah.
What have you heard? What have you heard from the Iranians?
They'd like to talk, but they should have done that before. I had 60 days, and they had 60 days, and on the 61st day, I said, we don't have a deal. They have to make a deal, and it's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war, and they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
And what intelligence support are you providing Israel?
We've always supported Israel. We have for a long period of time, strongly. And Israel's doing very well right now.
Trump's happy with how the war is going. He said it's going very well. And I think he's happy that America is not participating in the war. He's keeping his promise about non-interventionism. I mean, remember, Iran are the original death, the great Satan. The little Satan was Israel. The great Satan was always America. Remember, they took U.S. hostages. Do you remember that? That they, very early on, they seized hostages from the U.S. Embassy, and Jimmy Carter hummed and hawed, and Reagan helped get them back. They have undermined the West and bombed many countries. I find it really weird that we're not more grateful to Israel for taking out this menace, like Israel did with the Iraqi nuclear reactor in the 1980s and with Syria's nuclear reactor in 2007. Imagine if Israel had not eliminated the Iraqi reactor 45 years ago. They would have had a nuke, and Syria might likely have one too. Well, it's been very interesting days. There's about 10 different stories I merged into one. Stay with us. Up next, my friend Richard Inman from Northern Ireland. Well, we love to cover Ireland because we love to cover the story of mass immigration, and we love the fighting spirit of the Irish. There is a rebellious streak in that people, and they're not taking it lightly. As you know, we were at a march in Dublin a few weeks ago with more than 50,000 people, which is an enormous march, a completely peaceful march. And the flag they flew was that of Ireland. It was interesting to point that out because the flag of the counter-protesters was the Palestinian flag. It's so unusual what's happening. Even more unusual is that the entire political establishment is against the people. The entire political establishment, all the major parties are for mass immigration. All the media is too, at least the regime media. Very interesting to me. But I want to talk to you about Northern Ireland. Remember that the island of Ireland, there are 6 counties that are part of the United Kingdom in the north, and they are largely Protestant. The Republic of Ireland is the southern counties, and it is largely Catholic. So there are some important divides, religious divides, ethnic divides, if you will. But imagine being part of the UK government and choosing to put into Northern Ireland, a place where they've had sectarian differences before, a place where a generation ago there were the Troubles, that is, the IRA and counter paramilitaries and actual low-grade terrorism for years. Imagine being one of the tall foreheads in London and saying, let's put military-age migrant men from foreign nationalities right in the heart of Northern Ireland. Maybe we could even find a way to stick them between Catholics and Protestants. I mean, if you're talking about a cultural fit, I can't think of a worse place to put them. And indeed, many of the fears came true. As you know, a few weeks ago, several migrants were accused of raping an Irish child. And what was so interesting is that the resulting protests that turned into riots included both Protestants and Catholics who found a common threat, that of mass immigration, larger than their religious and sectarian differences. That's how it looked like to me, at least. I've never been to Northern Ireland, never been to Ballymena where the riots were, or even Belfast, but I'm lucky enough to have a friend who lives there, and he joined us on the scene when these riots happened. He's back there with an update. His name is Richard Inman, and we're delighted to talk to him via Zoom. Richard, did I more or less, I mean, you can't sum up Northern Ireland in a paragraph. It's a very complex and rich history, and I'm certainly not partisan one way or the other. I guess my point is, this is a place where ethnicity and nationality and even language are very personal. And things came to blows in that part of the world. So sticking in foreign people who have different culture, religion, language, history seems like a terribly bad idea to me. What do you think, Richard?
Oh, absolutely, Ezra. And you summed it up very well. That's exactly the situation. And we've been warning about this for many, many years. And basically what happened here in Ballymena was there was a very small element of Roma gypsies came into the town and basically set up shop, a mafia that was involved in drug dealing, prostitution, people trafficking, money laundering, a mini criminal empire. And they then started sort of flexing their muscles, and even worse than flexing their muscles, they decided they'd start allegedly, and we've got to say that because of the British legal situation, allegedly, 2 girls were indecently assaulted by these Roma gypsies within the last 2 weeks. Now, since then, there's been a lot happened. Since we last spoke, Ezra, there's been a lot happened.
For sure. You're standing in front of one of the apartments or homes that was considered the home base of some of these migrants. And I understand that things were smashed, vehicles were smashed. It looks like that place was torched. It looks like it's boarded up. Can you describe where you are standing right now and if indeed anyone is still living in there?
No, there's no one living in it. As far as I know, all the Roma gypsies have now left Ballymena. And again, I'm led to believe that that house and some of the other houses that were attacked were occupied by some of this criminal element in the town, and obviously these people that had these allegations hanging over them. And again, I said it last time, but it's worth saying again that in Ireland there is still community, both north and south. Northern Ireland, there's a very, very strong loyalist and Republican community, and in the south, obviously, there's a very, very strong nationalistic, patriotic Irish community. And what happened in Ballymena 2 weeks ago has actually brought the two communities together. I've got the footage. I'll send it over to you, Ezra. But we had, walking past us 5 minutes before we came live, we had 200 or 300 women and children walking through this area to show that they're not going to put up with women and children being targeted by anyone, whether they be migrants, whether they be indigenous people. It's not going to happen. And that is, talking to the people of Ballymena, they want to say 2 things to the Lord, because you're the only platform, Ezra, that is giving the people of Ballymena a fair crack of the whip, as we say over here. You're the only person that's been truly representing the facts on the ground. And the facts are that what happened in Ballymena was a criminal element allegedly attacked two little girls in the most vile manner. And the community said, enough's enough, we're not having it, you're going. And all I'm going to say is the Roma community, as far as I know, from this area of town that were involved in that criminality, are not here anymore. What happened then? The BBC, the mainstream media, the Belfast Telegraph, the British press, all of them demonised the people of Ballymena as racist bigots. And I've just done an interview with a lady she's from the Czech Republic. So she's a migrant, and she's standing with her friends from Ballymena because she says all they have shown her as a migrant to this country is love and warmth. They've helped her with everything that she's needed since she came over here. She's part of the community love her, and she loves the community. And that's the sort of migration, if we have to have migration, that's the sort of migration we want, where people come and settle and integrate with the community. But when you have things like this Roma gypsy criminal gang, and you have things like happened in Telford and Rotherham with the Pakistani rape mafia, well, That's when the people rise up and say, enough's enough, we're not going to put up with this. And that's really what's happened here. So to pass it off as racist hatred and bigotry is a complete lie and a complete inversion of the truth. And like I say, Ezra, what's happened is brought the two communities together, which is an amazing thing.
Wow. You know, I'm trying to process in my mind why there are so many rallies in Ireland. You were telling me before we turned the cameras on, there's going to be one in Belfast this weekend. There was one in Limerick this past weekend. That's in the Republic of Ireland. I was at Cork a few weeks ago. Like every little town and city is having rallies. They're often ignored by the mainstream media. We love to cover them and we try and give them big exposure, but if we're not there, they're really downplayed. And I'm trying to think, why are those rallies happening in Ireland, but not so much in the United Kingdom, other than Northern Ireland, not at all in Canada. I haven't seen anti-immigration rallies in these other places. And my theory is this, Richard, and you tell me what you think. Ireland is still pretty Irish. And Northern Ireland is still, it has a very low migration level. I mean, London, the capital of the UK, is majority minority already. But the Republic of Ireland outside of Dublin and Northern Ireland is still very Irish. And in places like Ballymena that are smaller towns, people know each other. So there's a sense of community. And so if you hear a girl got raped, you probably know them, or you want to find out who they are, and you think, oh, that's so-and-so's cousin, or I know their friend. Like there's a real family feeling. And so it's shocking, and people have like blood is thicker than water. And so people come because they can see the changes. Whereas in London, where everything is already atomized and it's a city of strangers, people say, oh, well, that's too bad. But they're not taking a stake in the community. What I observed I've told this anecdote many times, but it left a big impression on me. I was in the little village of Dundrum, Ireland, population 200. I just showed up with my cameraman. We were taking some background footage, and someone came up and said, who are you guys? Like they were sort of worried for the community, and they weren't angry. They just wanted to know, who are these strangers? And I guess living in a small town, you lose some privacy, but what you gain in return is a family and a protection. And I sort of loved it. I mean, I'm a big city guy, but I can imagine how wonderful it is to grow up in a place like Dundrum, where no one has to lock their doors and everyone knows each other. And so when you're invaded by hundreds of migrants, in Dundrum, they brought in 240 migrant men in a town of 200. You're a place like Ballymena, which is a smaller town. When there's a rape, you know about it. And if you don't, and you have a connection to it, you care, you still care. And maybe you don't in Dublin, although 50,000 care. Anyway, I'm going on at length, but I think the Irish, because they're the indigenous ethnicity, because they've been there for centuries, because they have such a common bond, they care more. And it wounds them when foreign migrants, who are sometimes called invaders because they're pressed into these places. No one invited them in. No one in Ballymena asked for migrants. No one in Dundrum asked for migrants. So that's my thesis, Richard. I'm trying to figure it out. Maybe you can correct me or expand or alter my thesis.
You're absolutely right. The difference between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland still has community. And, that's why anyone that comes here and gets involved in the community and joins the community loves the place. And that is the big difference. The UK, sadly, does not have that community. Now, we're trying to build it, the United Kingdom rallies and what we're doing with Tommy Robinson. Obviously, that's a big part of trying to redress that. But what a lot of us here in Northern Ireland believe is that there's a deliberate policy to try and delegitimize, demonize, and destroy that community. And of course, the only way that the mainstream media, the politicians, and even the police force have of doing that is by branding everybody that takes the streets when children are abused by a criminal mafia that's moved into the town, by classing everybody that's done that as racist. But community is massive in this country. Everybody's families live close to each other. Everybody's together. And what I've seen in last week in Ballymena, nobody stayed here as long as I have since this story got on. They come in and they go out, so they don't know what's going on. Take time to speak to the people. I've taken time to sit and break bread with the people. And what I found is that this has actually brought the community closer together. Now, there are issues I do want to talk about, Ezra, because one of the problems that we've got is a lot of young lads that have got caught up in this rioting are now going to be looking at very, very serious custodial sentences. And the reason they're going to get serious custodial sentences is because what the state and the prosecutors and the police force are going to do is going to tag racism onto the charge of riotous assembly, which will mean they'll get a substantially longer prison sentence. And that's why the media, the politicians and the police are pushing the lie, and it is a lie, that this is a racist mob ransacking migrants' homes, which couldn't be further from the truth. Like I said, there's loads of migrants in this town that have never had any bother from anyone. They integrate, they go to the pubs with people, they go to the churches with people, they go to the coffee shops with people. That's not the issue. It was one very small criminal element that literally totally destabilized this town. And I want to say something else as well, Ezra. I think I sent you the video. I'm not sure if you've seen it. But I got sent footage last week of unmarked white vans driving through the estates of this town and literally dragging children off the street. And I'm not talking about gently saying get into the van, physically dragging them off the street. Goodness knows what happens to them when they went into the vans. And you know, if that's not an abuse of the legal process, I don't know what is. If you take a child into a van and you're not the child's parents, in my eyes, that's called kidnapping, Ezra.
So so these were police vans, you're saying? They had these sort of snatch raids, I think they were called, where they go out and then they sort of pounce on someone and bundle them out. I guess that's a tactic to avoid, just to pick them off one at a time.
Yeah. But the problem with it is, Ezra, who are they actually picking up? Is it, you know, anyone that's dressed in black? My goodness, I'm dressed in black tonight. Does that mean I'm going to get my collar felt when I try to walk back to my car? You know, it didn't seem to be targeted. It seems to be that they were just grabbing kids, trailing them off the street, trailing them to the back of these vans, and goodness knows what's happened to those children. Have they been charged? Are they remanded? We don't know.
Well, Richard, that makes me think because, and again, I'm trying to keep my jurisdictions straight, but in the United Kingdom proper, so not Northern Ireland, but in the UK, in the city of Southport, where there was a terrorist attack by a convert to Islam whose parents were migrants, and he stabbed a bunch of little girls at a Taylor Swift themed party. That also led to riots, and Keir Starmer called the rioters racist, and he set up 24-hour-a-day courts, which I've never heard of in my life. And he boasted about this. Keir Starmer used to be the chief prosecutor in the UK. So he would, round the clock, and he would just bam, 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 bam. It was like drumhead justice. And all these people, who was he prosecuting? There were some people who were physical. But I'm referring to people who tweeted about it, people who made a Facebook post about it, people who gestured inappropriately. I saw someone was imprisoned for shouting at a dog, shouting at a police dog. I don't believe you should shout at a dog, I suppose, unless you're saying bad dog or something. But that's not a prison term. People were getting 2.5 years in prison for a tweet. I'm worried that that is what Keir Starmer, because he's the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, I'm worried he's going to try and do the same thing up there. And anyone who even comments on these rapes or comments on the migrant issue is going to be prosecuted. I think he would rather silence people than solve the problem. Have you heard of any of that? Is anyone being charged with a social media crime, Richard?
Now, I'm not sure about social media crime. What I do know is that people have been arrested that were just at the riots. And I heard of a 13-year-old child that was arrested. He wasn't involved in the rioting. He was just basically spectating. He's been arrested and charged with riotous assembly. And what I've been told, and again, this is anecdotal, but it's from a reliable source, the mother has been charged with child neglect. So the mother and the child from that family have both been arrested in connection with this riot. Kids that have been pulled into these vans, apparently they go straight before the judge. They're getting remanded straight away, locked up straight away. So it's very, very alarming. And I've also been told that the police are starting to look at people's social media, and they're going to be making arrests for people that have just posted on social media, which for the game we're in, Ezra, is very alarming to say the least.
Well, we know from a report in the Times of London a month ago that every single day in the UK, 30 people have police visit them, 30 a day for their social media posts. So if that is the baseline, I can only imagine how it's ramped up during a crisis like this in Ballymena. Well, Richard, I'm very grateful to you for being on the spot. I've never had the opportunity to go to Northern Ireland. It's not as easy to get to as, say, Dublin or London for us Canadians. But maybe we'll visit one day, and hopefully you'll be in a position to show us around. I get the feeling that if you're a foreign journalist, you're probably going to be looked at with some skepticism, because I think the regime media generally is an enemy of the people. And I wouldn't want myself or any other rebel journalist to be misidentified, say, as with the BBC or something, because, you know, we might get a punch in the nose. But if you were there to keep us on the right path, I'm sure we'd be grateful to you.
Well, Ezra, you'd be surprised how many people know you in Northern Ireland already, and you'd also be surprised how many people know and love Tommy. So if you have anything to do with Tommy, a lot of people will know you anyway. We can make sure that if you come up here, Ezra, you'll be absolutely fine. But one last point on coming across the border. One of the good things about the disastrous fallout from the way the Brexit negotiations went, there is no border in Ireland. So you get to Dublin, you can get to Belfast. It's a 50-mile drive.
Right on. Okay, good. Well, listen, I'm slowly discovering all these interesting places. They're interesting. The people are wonderful. And I keep saying to my Canadian friends, we can learn from other jurisdictions. We can learn what to do right, what to do wrong. We can learn what works and what doesn't work. And I think watching Ireland stand up, there's a fighting spirit there. I don't know if we have it as Canadians, to be honest, Richard. We're a little more passive than I was in Cork the other day, and their motto is the rebel county. I don't know if Canadians are built that way, but there's a lot of lessons we could learn from Ireland, and I'm still digesting it in my mind. So I'm grateful to you for helping be our Sherpa, guiding us on this quest for knowledge. Thank you for taking the time, my friend.
It's a pleasure always, Ezra. Pleasure always.
Okay, there he is, Richard Inman, friend of mine. I met him through Tommy Robinson in the UK, so you know he's on the good guy's side. Stay with us. More ahead. Hey, welcome back. Your letters to me. Blood Cancer to Boston says, I love the Persian people. This is incredible news. Praying for Iran. They've been under a cloud since 1979. Yeah, you know, I find the Persian people have a great sense of humor. They're very well educated. They love the West. They have a sorrow for the Iran they lost. There's a great expat community in Toronto and Vancouver, and a huge one in LA. And I want to tell you something. Rebel News, I believe, is responsible for tipping 2 ridings away from the Liberals. One of them is Yara Sachs in York Centre, and you know all the things we did to get her rooted out. The other is Maji Johari, who was a little bit further north. The funny thing is Yara Sachs was in my district, and Maji Johari was in David Menzies' district, and we had the billboard truck there, and we did stories there. Both of them lost. I think the Persian Canadian community maybe was tricked into voting for him because he had a Persian name, but he was actually a regime supporter. So Maji Johari, the MPP for the Richmond Hill area there, he was a pro-Ayatollah MP. So for that district to throw him out was a great moment, I think, for the community and for us. We had some involvement. Cat Canada says, Candy Owens would have sided with the Soviets during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah, you know, I remember Candace Owens when she was sort of normal and before she went a little bit nuts. And when I mean nuts, I sort of mean nuts. Here's an interview she did with my friend Steve Edgington of GB News, where he asked her, should America have joined the Second World War? And she says, I don't think so. And he says, even though Japan attacked Pearl Harbor? And she said, scientists should study that. Here, look at this clip.
Good. I want to be concerned with just America's problems. As soon as those get resolved, I'm happy to peek up our head and say, oh, well, you know what? There are our friends over there in the UK. Let's see how they're doing, if we can help them. But America first.
But Japan did attack Pearl Harbor, so presumably you would have reacted to that.
Yeah, I mean, yes, look at it. I think, of course, if you're ever talking about a threat in terms of your nation being attacked, you should always have an equal response. But at the moment,
so that war was just.
But a response was just, right? Does the response necessarily dictate a world war? These are questions that should be relegated, I think, to an academic discussion. These would be interesting academic discussions. I'd love to have a bunch of people and to play out those scenarios. What if we had just responded to Japan and dealt with the threat? You know, I haven't had the time to sit down and think about it, and I definitely don't want to do that on the fly and get that wrong. But it would be a very interesting discussion to think about other options in terms of responding to things. You know, Tucker Carlson a couple of weeks ago said that he wouldn't have dropped a nuke, and the world went, what are you talking about? And I said, no, he's absolutely correct. The war was essentially over. Japan was already negotiating their surrender. They had been literally on the defense for 2 years. There was no reason that we needed to drop that bomb on a Catholic church, no less, in Nagasaki in order to end the war. That's garbage that you're being taught in your school system, and it's making it so that you don't think critically and that you don't question government initiatives when they say, rah, 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 let's go to war. Let's have the courage to talk about what the military-industrial complex is and whether or not it's serving us. Because let me tell you something. If we're sending trillions of dollars and trillions of dollars overseas, and they're taking money from us every second of the day to fight wars, and you're telling me that we don't even have a secure border, that's fraud. I don't care which way they try to spin it. I don't care how many sad stories they try to tell us. That is absolute fraud being enacted upon the American people.
A letter on the G7 summit, Gobaba Wonen says, we don't have a truly free press, so the government can so easily restrict who can ask them questions. Well, that's a battle we've been fighting for many years, isn't it? Since they first tried to keep us out of the election debates in 2019. It's been 6 years now, and we're still fighting them in court. All the time, actually. Well, that's our show for today. Until next time, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you at home, good night. Keep fighting for freedom.